Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, former South African President Jacob Zuma crops up in the US State Department's latest Epstein file drop. Published emails related to the late US sex offender suggest that Epstein helped Zuma arrange a dinner with a Russian model just days after the leader had banqueted at Buckingham Palace in London. Also, years after the last devastating regional conflict, and Tigrayans living in northern Ethiopia are increasingly worried that they could tip back into war as clashes between federal troops and regional forces continue into Monday. And we head to Kenya for its capital's Fashion Week. It's wrapped up, but designers are hoping that their messages will endure. Several presented collections geared towards sustainable fashion and their calls for more decarbonisation of an industry notorious for contributing to landfill. But first, the latest trove of Epstein files released by the US State Department on Friday is sending ripples through South Africa. Now, emails contained within the millions of documents linked to Jeffrey Epstein describe a 2010 dinner that he attended and arranged for former South African President Jacob Zuma. And a Russian model approached specially to join their intimate party. Now, Epstein was jailed in 2008 for paying a minor for sex. And he died by suicide in a Manhattan jail in 2019. Our Eunice Masson talks us through Zuma's apparent connection to Epstein. So, Eunice, what do these emails appear to show in terms of the link between Zuma and Epstein?
Sure. So what we know is limited to correspondence between an Epstein associate, we know as he's called Mark Lloyd, a Russian model, and then Epstein himself. At the time of this correspondence that this took place, former President Jacob Zuma was on an official state visit to the UK in March 2010. He was in fact invited by the Queen, Queen Elizabeth II, and enjoyed two banquets at the Buckingham Palace. Then on this final night of this visit, it is believed that he dined with Epstein. Now, according to the Epsteinfiles, a Russian model was invited by this Mark Lloyd to attend this dinner at the Ritz Hotel. And in this text between them, Lloyd explains to her that she will dine with Zuma. Lloyd, who is understood to be a close associate to Epstein, seemed to have even been dazzled by the former president. He wrote to Epstein after the dinner saying that Zuma was a much more impressive character than expected. This is more or less where the files end, mentioning Zuma. Now, since the release of the files on Friday, the Jacob Zuma Foundation has denied any connection between Zuma and Epstein. The foundation spokesperson, Zwanele Manhi, he claims that the files is a smear campaign against the former president, and he said that the foundation will not participate in any speculative talk. However, the time Zuma visited the UK lines up with the dates of the files, and more importantly, at the time in 2010, Epstein, Georgia, as you mentioned, was already a sex offender. He pleaded guilty to soliciting prostitution in 2008, and he was sentenced to 18 months in prison. So should these files be watertight, Zuma should have known exactly who he was meeting that night in the Ritz Hotel. And that says a lot, as he was South Africa's president at the time of this meeting.
Not a good look, if that is in fact what happened. Are there any other links between what's being understood about Epstein's life and his connections and South Africa?
Yeah, sure. So Zuma is not the only South African name that popped up or that cropped up in these texts. Perhaps the most mentioned name at the moment, aside from Zuma, of course, is Juliet Bryant. She's a survivor of Epstein's abuse and has talked to local media about how she was groomed and then sexually assaulted by him back in 2002 to 2004. Bryant added her voice to the list of survivors in 2019 after Epstein was arrested. So that's Bryant and then Zuma. And then we also know other South African, two South Africans, a couple, Kathy and Miles Alexander are mentioned in the files as well. They're keeping it low key, but they did work on the Epstein Island for almost a decade. But they claim that they never knew anything about the sex offenses that only later surfaced. We also know that tech billionaire Elon Musk, who was born in South Africa, is also mentioned.
Eunice Masson there for us in Cape Town. Now to Nigeria, where dozens of churchgoers thought to have been abducted in northern Nigeria in January have returned home. Around 166 people went missing after gunmen raided 3 churches in Kaduna State last month. But around half, apparently, had actually hidden from their armed attackers in the forest. And some have now dared to come out to find their families. Sam Olokoya brings us more.
Both the police and head of the Krumiwali village, where the incident happened, confirmed that 80 worshippers who escaped abduction have been found. The worshippers were said to have escaped into the forest on the day of the incident and have been hiding there before they made contact with the village. They are said to be in good health despite their ordeal in the forest. Some of them have returned to the village, while others have gone elsewhere as they are too scared to return home. But it is not all good news. 86 other worshippers are still in captivity. The government has been criticized for not doing enough to rescue them 2 weeks after they were abducted. The worshippers were abducted mid-last month from 3 churches during Sunday service. Rather than act promptly to rescue the victims, the police and the government said the incident did not happen. In what appeared an attempt to cover up the incident, the police warned that anyone spreading the news about the attack on the churches will be arrested and prosecuted for peddling fake news. Following overwhelming evidence and the insistence of the villagers, authorities were to later acknowledge the incident happened. The gunmen who abducted the worshippers are demanding a large sum of money, which the villagers say they cannot afford.
Now, 3 years after the last devastating conflict in the region, and Tigrayans living in northern Ethiopia are increasingly worried that their lives could tip back into war. Clashes between federal troops and forces from Tigray restarted last week and continued into Monday. Backsliding that has got the whole of East Africa concerned. Our regional correspondent, Bastien Renouy, brings us more.
8 Tigrayan civil society organizations published a joint communique on Saturday. They are calling on the different parties to reject war and to commit to peace and dialogue. They say that the people of Tigray cannot afford a new war and that they are yet to heal from the previous conflict. Between 2020 and 2022, at least 600,000 people were killed in Tigray, according to the African Union. And I can tell you that today in Tigray, most civilians are afraid of a new conflict. Last week, troops from the federal government fought against troops belonging to the Tigrayan government, and this weekend several drone strikes on central Tigray killed at least 1 person and injured another. During an interview on Tigrayan TV on Saturday, Tadesse Werede, the chief administrator of the interim regional administration of Tigray, said that troops belonging to the Tigray Defense Force are withdrawing from a contested area. It shows clearly that we have no desire to return to war, he said, adding that there is no question that can be answered by war, but by peace and negotiations. He also said that his demands are unchanged. He wants the internally displaced people from the previous conflict to return to Tigray, and he also wants the restoration of the region's constitutional sovereignty. He says that he's ready to negotiate with Addis Ababa, but that if these demands are not met, the war could return to Tigray.
That breakdown there for us by Bastien Renouy. Now, Nairobi Fashion Week's wrapped up, but designers are hoping that their message is a timeless one. Several presented collections geared towards sustainable fashion, as our Aline Botin tells us.
Nairobi's 8th Fashion Week spotlights the industry's environmental cost. Both designers and spectators coming together to call for change on and off the runway.
When you talk about decarbonize, a lot of people think about fossil fuels, but fashion is the second emitter of global carbon emissions. So we have to think about it critically and best see how we can address it.
Each year, 92 million tons of textiles are thrown away worldwide. Many creatives are excited about the potential of reusing material to create a sustainable solution for their sector.
80% of the collection I showcased for today was all upcycled fabric. So I bought a lot of these fabrics that you saw in the collection, all from the second-hand market, local markets, the Gikomba.
There is no shortage of material. In 2023, Kenya became Africa's top importer of second-hand clothing. Every year, thousands of tons from across the world are shipped in. But researchers estimate that over 30% of these textiles end up in landfills.
I think what we are calling really and we are pushing really is for the global north to stop dumping and for the local government to ensure that there is stringent measures at the port of entry where we are saying if anything is of low quality, then we will not accept.
Nairobi Fashion Week is a call to embrace a slower, more responsible approach in light of the increasingly clear damage caused by fast fashion to the planet.
And finally, Nigerian musical icon Fela Kuti became the first African to be awarded a Lifetime Achievement Award at the Grammys over the weekend. Now, he died in 1997, but his relevance endures. And it is a posthumous acknowledgement of his immense impact on global contemporary sound. So we'll leave you with some of the rhythms of the father of Afrobeat.
After you hear this, it will talk. If you like it good, if you no like you hang. If you like it good, if you no like you hang.